Welcome back to the Republic Brothers Podcast. He's Matt, I'm Mike. Today's March 15th, 2026, and this is episode 42. Before we get into the show, please hit the subscribe button and like the episode so you don't miss our next episode on Thursday. We have a terror attack to discuss and a bunch of Operation Epic Fury. Let's go. Unfortunately, we have to lead off the show with a little bit of sad stuff. Thursday, March 12, 2026, a man rammed a truck into the Temple Israel in West Bloomfield, Michigan. The FBI are calling it a targeted act of violence against the Jewish community. At approximately 12:30 p.m., the suspect plowed his truck through the entrance doors of the synagogue and continued driving down a hallway. He was armed with a rifle and reportedly had explosives in the vehicle.
The FBI is now investigating the attack on a Michigan synagogue as a targeted attack against the Jewish community.
All right, it comes after police say a suspect rammed his car through the building where more than 100 of young students were attending school.
Terrible. Madison Scarpino joins us live in Michigan with the details. Good morning, Madison.
Good morning, you guys. Yeah, things could have been a lot worse. So a lot of parents waking up this morning just thankful that none of their kids were hurt. None of the staff here were hurt. But we are now learning more about the man behind this horrific attack. DHS says his name is Ahmed Mohammed Ghazali. He's 41 years old. He was born in Lebanon, entered the U.S. in 2011, and became a U.S. citizen in 2016. According to the Dearborn Heights mayor, where the suspect lived, he lost several members of his family, including his niece and nephew, in an airstrike this weekend in Lebanon as part of the war in Iran. So that may have prompted this attack. Here's President Trump on all of this yesterday.
I want to send our love to the Michigan Jewish community and all of the people in Detroit area following the attack on the Jewish synagogue early today. And I've been fully briefed, and it's a terrible thing, but it goes on. We're going to be right down to the bottom of it. It's absolutely incredible that things like this happen.
Officials say Ghazali drove a truck right through the doors of the Temple Israel synagogue. More than 100 kids were inside, babies to 5-year-old children, as the attacker had a rifle and some sort of explosive device that ended up setting the truck on fire inside of the building. But before the suspect was able to do any more damage, on-site security guards shot him. Officials say one of those security guards was hit by the truck, knocked unconscious, but is expected to be okay. And around 30 law enforcement officers were hospitalized for smoke inhalation, but officials say there's no doubt those security guards saved lives.
Thankfully, no one was seriously hurt other than the suspect. It certainly looks like this was in response to what's going on in the Middle East, and I think this just proves the point that you've been making. This guy has the same mentality that Iranian leadership has. They don't care about hurting civilians and children.
I was very glad to hear nobody other than the suspect was hurt. Innocent people minding their own business should never be the target. But given this guy's family was linked to Hezbollah, it's not a surprise that he thought like they did. It's absolutely linked to what's going on in the Middle East. I have said many times on this podcast that we should be vetting anyone who wants to come to the U.S. If they do not want to assimilate into our culture and share our values, we should decline their request to live here. If you import the third world, you become the third world. Now, I hate to say this, but I think this is something that will happen again. We've brought in millions and millions of people from all over the world, and some of them are sympathizers to the terrorist groups.
Yeah, the sad thing is there's also people who are citizens of this country who are sympathizers of terror groups.
That's what media propaganda is for. You'll notice the media doesn't like what Trump did, regardless of who it's against. They're just against Trump, and because Trump is against the terror group, they have to be against Trump.
Yeah, you said something I want to touch on again. If you import the third world, you will become the third world. That's a great point. It's kind of like saying, if you hang out with 4 broke people, you'll be the 5th.
Very much so, and it's not just the U.S. that should be worried about that. There are many nations, Europe in particular, that are finding that out firsthand.
All right, let's get into our biggest story and our updates on Operation Epic Fury. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says Iran's new supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured. Here's what he had to say.
Iran's leadership is in no better shape. Desperate and hiding, they've gone underground, cowering. That's what rats do. We know the new so-called not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured. He put out a statement yesterday, a weak one, actually, but there was no voice and there was no video. It was a written statement. He called for unity. Apparently killing tens of thousands of protesters is his kind of unity. Iran has plenty of cameras and plenty of voice recorders. Why a written statement? I think you know why. His father, dead. He's scared, he's injured, he's on the run, and he lacks legitimacy. It's a mess for them. Who's in charge? Iran may not even know.
I don't think it's any surprise that they wouldn't risk popping this guy above ground. As soon as he sees daylight, he's dead.
You are spot on with that take. The only reason the last leadership group got together was because they thought we wouldn't strike during the day. Big mistake on their part. Once the new leader comes out of hiding, he knows he will get the same fate as his father. Pete Hegseth is right, by the way. It was a very weak statement from the leader. He's trying to show himself as a strongman, but everyone in Iran knows he's the biggest target in the country right now.
Well, then I happened to stumble on this clip from Ben Shapiro talking about the new leader of Iran.
Mojtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader of Iran, reportedly is down to one leg. Apparently, the Israelis blew off the other one in that same strike that took out Mojtaba's dad. Well, at least Mojtaba still has a working dick. Well, sorry to strike that. His dick wasn't working even before he ended up in a reported coma. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention that? Allegedly, Mojtaba isn't even conscious, which is why at a ceremony for Mojtaba, where the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps showed up so they could pledge allegiance to him, they used a cardboard cutout of him. I am not joking. Check it out. They're pledging allegiance, not to him, but to a picture of him, like a poster board they printed at Iranian Kinko's. By the way, this is also how I run our office. I put up a cardboard cutout, and then my staffers talk to it, and we call it a successful meeting. But that's how Iran is currently doing its government, like right this very instant. According to the New York Post, Mojtaba's dad explicitly left a will saying, do not appoint this derelict impotent to replace me. Here is the Post, quote, assassinated Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was so opposed to his son taking power that he noted it in his will, experts told the Post. Quote, in Khamenei's will, he explicitly asked Mojtaba not to be named as a successor. Well, then they appointed Mojtaba anyway. Well, I guess at least his mother loved him. Maybe.
This guy's in a coma? And his dad didn't even want him to be the leader. What in the world is going on in Iran?
That would not be a surprise if he were in a coma. I saw the ceremony where they were pledging allegiance to Mojtaba, and it was the weirdest thing I've seen in a while. He wasn't even there, and they were worshiping like a cardboard cutout of him. We know Iran had a succession plan if Khamenei was taken out, but they were certainly shocked by how many of the top leadership was taken out in the first strike. It's telling that his dad did not want him to be the leader. Normally, people in power want their son to take over and continue their legacy, but he must have seen him as very incompetent. It makes me think that Iran just didn't have any other good options.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense on why Hegseth said he's disfigured then. Missing a leg and in a coma.
Yes, and not being at your own ceremony makes more sense if that's the case. It's a matter of time before his run as leader ends. You can't have a leader who is unable to execute his duties as the leader. That is the case for every country. If we do not find him and finish him, the IRGC leadership will replace them on their own.
A little more sad news I want to get into. We have learned that 6 more service members have lost their lives after a U.S. refueling plane crashed. Now, this sounds like some kind of accident, but we are still waiting for the full details.
I also want to address the tragic loss of our KC-135 refueling aircraft yesterday. The incident occurred over friendly territory in western Iraq while the crew was on a combat mission, and again was not the result, as CENTCOM has said, was not the result of hostile or friendly fire. We're still treating this as an active rescue and recovery operation. As CENTCOM announced this morning, 4 airmen have been recovered, and the Air Force and U.S. Central Command will provide updates as information becomes available.
War is hell. War is chaos. And as we saw yesterday with the tragic crash of our KC-135 tanker, bad things can happen. American heroes, all of them. And as I have with all of them, as we have, we will greet those heroes at Dover, and their sacrifice will only recommit us to the resolve of this mission. But war in this context and in pursuit of peace is necessary.
Now, at the time of that press conference, they had only recovered 4 of the 6. It has been confirmed since then that it was 6, bringing the total number to 14. Major John Alex Kleiner, 33 of Auburn, Alabama, Captain Ariana G. Savino, 31 of Covington, Washington, Tech Sergeant Ashley B. Pruitt, 34 of Bardstown, Kentucky, Captain Seth R. Koval, 38 of Mooresville, Indiana, Captain Curtis J. Angst, 30 of Wilmington, Ohio, and Tech Sergeant Tyler H. Simmons, 28 of Columbus, Ohio. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers go out to these service members. We don't want anyone to lose their lives because of this conflict. But again, as we have said multiple times, we understand the necessity for it.
It's always a bad day when we lose service members. It's always very sad. The way they talk about this makes me think there could have been a mid-air collision between our own planes. They said 2 planes were involved and the other plane landed safely. There was no hostile or friendly fire that took them down, so what was it? Planes are very resilient machines, and it is very unusual for a fatal plane crash to happen without something catastrophic going on. My guess would be a mid-air collision because there aren't very many options that can go wrong on a plane that would bring it down.
Yeah, regardless of whatever the final outcome is, the final investigation with this, like you said, we know it wasn't hostile or friendly fire. So to me, it seems like some kind of accident. We're also still hearing that people are saying military members are dying for Israel, and the media is doing everything they can to push that narrative. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was very direct in his response when a reporter tried to trap him and say that he and President Trump were saying different things.
Yesterday, you told us that Israel was going to strike Iran and that's why we needed to get involved. Today, the president said that Iran was going to get
Yeah, your statement is false. So that's not what I was asked very specifically. Were you there yesterday?
Yes, I asked a question.
No, were you the one that, because somebody asked me a question yesterday, did we go in because of Israel? And I said, you were asking me that follow-up. And I said, no. I told you this had to happen anyway. The president made a decision, and the decision he made was that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ballistic missile program, that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ability to conduct these attacks. That decision had been made. The president systematically made a decision to systematically destroy this terroristic capability that they had, and we carried that out. I was very clear in that answer. This was a question of timing, of why this had to happen as a joint operation, not the question of the intent. Once the president made a decision that negotiations were not going to work, that they were playing us on the negotiations, and that this was a threat that was untenable, the decision was made to strike them. That's what I said yesterday, and you guys need to play it. And if you're going to play these statements, you need to play the whole statement, not clip it to reach a narrative that you want to do, all right?
We discussed this in the last episode, and Rubio is right once again. This war was always going to happen. The regime in Iran wanted a nuclear weapon. They were saying whatever they could to get relief from sanctions while still pursuing a nuclear weapon. Israel and the U.S. are working together because our interests align when it comes to Iran. It would be very bad if Iran got a nuclear weapon. Not just for the U.S., but Israel and all the other countries in the Middle East.
Yeah, it's still baffling to see these people say all these things, though. Even when we have video evidence of basically every politician saying that Iran having a nuclear weapon is bad. Did you hear about Joe Rogan talking about the UFC fight at the White House being a target for Iran? He was saying that he's not confident that the war will be over by then, and you'd have all these people in one place. If I'm not mistaken, the fight's supposed to be in June, right?
Yes. There are other sporting events going on right now that could be a target. There's large gatherings happening all over the country. It would be harder for them to hit people at the White House than another sporting event or large gathering because of the additional security at the White House. The World Cup is also this summer in the U.S., so that could also be a target. I would disagree with him. This almost certainly won't last that long, but terrorists don't care about timing. They'll wait until the time is right for them. They will want to launch the attack when they believe they can cause the most amount of casualties. They are terrorist groups, and terror is what they do. We can't shut down the whole country like we did with COVID because there's a potential threat somewhere that we don't know about. It sucks that it might happen, but you have to continue living your life. You can't let that fear of something that might or might not happen derail your life.
Agreed. Let's get into the cyber attack on Stryker now. The massive cyber attack on the Michigan-based medical technology company executed by the Iran-linked group Handala on March 11, 2026 has been described as a major retaliatory strike.
A pro-Iranian hacker group is claiming responsibility for a major cyber attack on a U.S. medical device maker, marking the first notable pro-Iranian hack against U.S. infrastructure since Operation Epic Fury began. The company, Stryker, releasing a statement saying, quote, "We are continuing to resolve the disruption impacting our global network resulting from the cyber attack. At this time, there is no indication of malware or ransomware, and we believe the situation is contained to our internal Microsoft environment only."
The attack caused widespread disruption across Stryker's global operations, forcing the company to shut down offices in over 50 countries. Employees reported watching in real time as a wiper malware erased data from thousands of Windows-based laptops, servers, and company-issued mobile phones, effectively bricking the devices. Handala claimed to have wiped over 200,000 systems and stolen 50 terabytes of sensitive data. During the breach, the hackers displayed their logo and their messages on company login screens, taunting Stryker's perceived ties to Israel. Handala labeled Stryker as a Zionist-rooted corporation, specifically citing its 2019 acquisition of the Israeli company Orthospace and its $450 million contract with the U.S. Department of Defense for medical devices. The fallout has been severe for Stryker, which employs 56,000 people and serves 150 million patients annually. Critical internal systems, including email and specialized medical tools like the LifeNet system, which is used by paramedics to transmit EKGs to the hospitals, were rendered non-functional in multiple regions. The FBI and Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency are currently investigating. So, Matt, here's my question to you. Why would a country use cyber attacks instead of using their own military?
Well, there are many reasons why nations do this. North Korea and China are infamous for hacker groups as well. Cyber attacks are a low-cost way to damage your enemy. It does not cost much and requires very little infrastructure. You can do billions of dollars in damage for a fraction of that cost. The attackers also get valuable data from the attack while causing uncertainty in the country that is affected. It's another tool for a terrorist to use, essentially. Now, the one we see quite often is the deniability part because you're not physically present. But once a full-blown conflict with direct military action starts, they don't usually care if people know it was them. The risk of escalation is low since it's already a full-blown conflict. They can claim the cyber attack and use it for propaganda internally. If there is no direct military conflict going on, it's quite typical that hacker groups don't claim it. They just take the data and hide.
You know, to me, this just seems like Iran trying to be annoying. They're that pesky gnat that won't go away. But at the same time, you're also poking a very large bear.
Very much so. They are a terrorist group trying to cause terror, and affecting medical systems in someone else's nation will cause severe uncertainty within some communities.
All right, let's move on to the next Iran update we have. The U.S. Embassy in Baghdad's high-security green zone was hit by an attack on Saturday morning, March 14th, 2026. We are hearing that at least one projectile struck a helipad inside the compound. What's noteworthy this time, though, is that unlike previous incidents, the local air defense systems weren't heard intercepting the incoming strike. This suggests that the projectile either slipped past the defenses or directly damaged them. This embassy hit came right after earlier U.S.-Israeli airstrikes that same morning in Baghdad's Kharg and Narawan areas. Those strikes resulted in the deaths of 3 Kataib Hezbollah members, including a top commander. Following the embassy attack, the State Department wasted no time in ordering all U.S. citizens to leave Iraq immediately.
Well, ideally, we would have removed all personnel from areas that were potential targets. I understand that might tip off the Iranians that an attack was coming, so it may not have been worth it. Iran is just trying to make this war as widespread as possible to hurt other nations in the region. The hope is that our allies in the region will pressure us into ending the conflict early, but that is just not an option for the U.S. or Israel at this point. If this leadership group in Iran is allowed to continue after the war ends, it will strengthen their resolve and push them to get nuclear weapons as soon as possible. That would mean the war would restart at some point in the near future. Given the U.S. and Israel have both said Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, it will start again.
Some more big news I want to get into from Friday, March 13th. U.S. forces hit Iran's main oil export hub, Kharg Island, with a massive targeted strike. The operation reportedly obliterated over 90 military spots, including missile bunkers, radar sites, naval mine storage, and the island's airport. The Pentagon's goal here was simple: make it much harder for the IRGC to block the Strait of Hormuz. By taking out those weapons storage areas, mines and missiles specifically, the U.S. is trying to guarantee free and safe passage for commercial ships. Despite the heavy bombing, President Trump stressed on Truth Social that he held back. He specifically chose not to destroy the vital oil infrastructure out of, quote, decency. However, he issued a stern warning. If Iran keeps messing with shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, he'll reconsider immediately and wipe out those oil facilities. Kharg Island is a huge deal. It handles about 90% of Iran's crude exports, mostly going to China. It's also one of the only places in the Gulf deep enough for supertankers. In response, Iranian officials claimed crude exports were still flowing just fine. Still, they warned that any U.S. hit on their energy assets would lead them to destroying U.S.-linked energy infrastructure across the region.
Well, you don't want to knock out any oil production now with prices already high. If you reduce oil supply, prices will go up even more, and it's important for Trump not to let this conflict on the other side of the world have a huge impact at home. It's a bit of an odd situation because normally in a war, you would target somebody's oil infrastructure, 1, to starve their military, but 2, to cut off their funding from exporting oil. There was clearly an incentive from both the U.S. and Israel not to drive oil prices through the roof. As we said in the last episode, there's still a lot of risk around this. That's why prices have gone up so much. I would be surprised if Trump pulled the trigger on Iran's oil exports, because then China would be competing for the oil with us and prices would go very high. Now, Iran making threats that they will hit our infrastructure is kind of funny. Their conventional military capabilities are destroyed for the most part. It's going to be quite difficult for them to do it. We've already seen numbers that say they're launching about 96% less missiles than they were at the start of the war. Their launch capabilities have been drastically reduced, not to zero, so they can still cause some pain, but it's hard to believe they have the capabilities to eliminate all of our infrastructure in the region.
While we're on the topic of oil prices, I saw a chart earlier today, and I just had to bring it up. So right now, gas prices are averaging $2.90, which, don't get me wrong, is high compared to what we've had for the last several months. But $2.90 is what the gas prices average was. I believe it was either 4 or 5 months into Joe Biden's presidency. From that point on, it was never lower than that.
It's tough because we saw over $100 a barrel at certain parts of our lifetime. I remember when I first started driving, we were paying more than $4 a gallon for gas, so it being in the low threes isn't great, but I'm used to it. If it's a short-term thing, it's worth it.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny because I first saw a clip of somebody else saying, oh, Donald Trump's bad because gas prices are almost $3 again. But then somebody else was like, well, yeah, it's the average is $2.90, but it was $2.90 5 months into Biden's term, and then after that, like it never went lower than that. It was way higher than that the whole time he was president and didn't go back down again until the end.
Well, that was intentional by Biden. He limited oil production in our own country. The left absolutely loves environmental regulations, and crude oil is seen as bad, so they did everything they could to stop it, despite the fact that we have no alternative to oil.
Yep, it's the one thing that makes the world go round.
As they say in the Landman show, the real crisis is when we run out of it.
Yep, exactly. All right, Matt, let's get into our blind ranking segment as we are at the end of the show. Same category as last episode, non-politicians that I would vote for president. Fire away.
I've got some very interesting names for you this time. Only celebrities, and some of them have some interesting political views, and some of them don't share their politics at all. First up, you have Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves. I like Keanu. I don't know if you've ever heard about his policy where, like, when someone takes a picture with him, like, he won't touch them.
Yeah, his hand will be on the other side of them, not touching them, so that you can see in the photo he's not touching them.
Yeah, I think he's a quality guy. Plus, I mean, his movies are awesome. So I'm gonna put Keanu at 1.
Going number 1 right off the bat. Okay.
Yep.
Now you have J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling. She's very outspoken about the whole trans.
She will keep boys out of your daughter's sports.
I'm gonna put J.K. at 2.
Number 2. Okay.
Yep. We've never had this before on a blind ranking. 1 and 2 off the board first.
That is a first, yes. I think I know where the next one is going. Alec Baldwin.
5.
I had a feeling that would be.
That one's easy.
You got 2 names left. Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp. I don't know what to do with Johnny Depp. I mean, it's really just all about who's coming next, and I don't really know. That's a tough one. I'm going to put Johnny Depp at 3.
I don't think you could have gone wrong with the last 2 names. I think they're very close. And in number 4, you have Brad Pitt.
Okay. Not bad. I'm good with that list.
I knew when I made the list that when I got to Alec Baldwin, you were going to put him 5 if you had 5 available.
Imagine if I would have put Keanu at 3, and then I had JK. I would have had to put her at 1 or 2. And then, man, that could have really messed up my list. I think I nailed it.
I thought you were going to end up with JK at 1 because I figured you'd put Keanu at 2.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think you got that right.
Yeah, I think I nailed it. All right, everyone, that's it for episode 42 of the Republic Brothers Podcast. If you're still listening and you haven't hit the subscribe or follow button, please hit it now. New episodes drop every Monday and Thursday. If you agree or disagree with anything we talked about, drop a comment and let us know. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.